When it comes to running a team in the NBA, there is a long list of things that organizations should not do. Many front offices throw big contracts at unproven prospects, give up too much draft capital for role players, or they fail to achieve a level of trust with their team. However, what the Sacramento Kings just did trumps all of these errors, and to me, it's not even close. For the past 15 seasons, a dark cloud has been draped over this franchise, as that's how long it's been since they were last in the postseason. Clearly, the Domantas Sabonis trade is Sacramento's way of trying to end that drought as soon as possible. At the making of this video, the Kings sit just a few games back of a play-in spot, and with two all-star caliber players in Fox and Sabonis on this team, they might be able to make a playoff push. While this sounds nice for a franchise that has struggled for so long, I can't help but think of the negative effects that this trade will have in the long term. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining why this Kings trade is even worse than people realize, and how it will ultimately hurt this franchise's reputation even more.
Murray, inside, incredible! LeBron James with no regard for human life. They do have a timeout, decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
For one, this move looks bad from the outside looking in. As I mentioned, the Kings have been an awful franchise in recent memory, and because of this, they haven't been an attractive destination for players. However, Tyrese Haliburton was someone that wanted to help change that. In just his second season with the team, Haliburton's numbers were more reminiscent of a veteran guard than that of a 21-year-old. With Sacramento, Haliburton was averaging 14.3 points, 7.4 assists, and 1.7 steals. But what's even more impressive is that he was averaging just 2.3 turnovers a night while shooting the ball very efficiently from the field. In many people's eyes, Tyrese was one of the few untouchable pieces on this Kings roster, not only for his play, but again, because he actually wanted to be there. That being said, it's a really bad look to trade a player of Haliburton's caliber because it makes their front office look that much more untrustworthy and incompetent. After getting traded to the Pacers, Haliburton said, "I put a lot of love, a lot of trust in Sacramento, and kind of immersed myself into the community and with the people, and they just got rid of me." Haliburton was one of the few good picks made by Sacramento in recent memory, and they made him feel like he wasn't wanted. Sacramento has already developed a bad reputation for having a losing culture, making poor roster decisions, and for struggling to find a consistent head coach, and this trade is a desperate attempt to make up for that, but it was done in the worst way possible. While one could argue that the Kings had to make a big-time trade like this to end their playoff drought, I'd argue that they didn't even do that correctly. With De'Aaron Fox having a bit of a down year, and Haliburton playing so well in his sophomore season, there was a lot of debate over who had more potential. Regardless of which player you believe in more, the reality is that one player is set to make over $30 million next season, while the other will only be making a little over $4 million. If Sacramento was dead set on improving in the short term, and Sabonis truly was the best player available to them, it would have made more sense to send Fox to the Pacers. I can't imagine that Indiana would have said no to De'Aaron Fox, as not only is he a talented young player, but he's a fun player to watch, which would have sold tickets in Indiana. Instead, the Kings will have $13 million in cap space this offseason, when they could have had $39 million in cap space if they kept Haliburton over Fox. Not only would that have given Sacramento more spending money in free agency, but it would have allowed them to take on more salary in a potential offseason trade. When you look at the Western Conference standings, it's hard to argue that a team with Fox, Sabonis, and limited money to work with this offseason can surpass some of these teams in the standings next year. It seems even more unlikely when you consider that teams like the Nuggets, Clippers, Pelicans, and Blazers should all be better next year when their stars return from injury. If Sacramento was so desperate to contend for the playoffs in the short term, it would have made more sense to keep the young guard, who still has 2 years left on his rookie contract, as that would have allowed them to put together a deeper roster this summer. Unfortunately, I think pride is what ultimately led to Fox staying on this roster over Haliburton. De'Aaron Fox was selected 5th overall in the 2017 draft, and up to this point in his career, I would say that he's lived up to the expectations. In just his 3rd year in the league, Fox averaged 21.1 points and 6.8 assists on 48% shooting from the field. Sacramento's front office was so impressed with his play that they decided to give him a 5-year, $163 million contract extension as a result. When you ignore their on-court ability and strictly focus on their prestige within the organization, Fox would appear to be the more valuable player. As I discussed, Fox was taken 5th overall, whereas Tyrese was drafted with the 12th pick, and the organization already committed a lot of money to Fox while Tyrese is still on his rookie contract. To me, this looks like a case of a front office trying to justify their belief in a player that they took very high in the draft and gave a lot of money to over anything else. I believe that there is merit to this, especially when you consider that Sabonis seems like he'd be a better fit with Halliburton than Fox. What Sabonis' time in Indiana showed us is that he is most effective when surrounded by shooters and defenders. During his time with the Kings, Tyrese attempted 5 threes per game and made 41.1% of them, while Fox has attempted just 3.4 a night and knocked them down at a 31.6% clip. Halliburton is also a better defender than Fox is, so again, with everything considered, it makes you wonder why the Kings were so eager to hold on to Fox and get rid of Halliburton in this trade. To be clear, anyone opposed to this move is not saying that Sabonis is a bad player. As of today, Sabonis is the best player involved in this trade, and he's still a year or two away from entering his prime. Since he became a full-time starter in the 2019-20 season, Sabonis has been named an All-Star twice, putting up 18 to 20 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 to 6 assists a night. However, he hasn't proven that he can be a franchise cornerstone in this league, and to give up a guy in Halliburton that many people feel can reach that level makes little to no sense. I can agree that the Kings did have a bit of a logjam at their guard position, and that in the long run, a 3-guard lineup with De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell, and Tyrese Halliburton probably wouldn't have been the best path for them to take. Still, it's shocking that Sacramento didn't give these guys more time to play with one another. Tyrese is in just his 2nd season in the league, and Davion is only a rookie. If I were a Kings fan, I would have liked to see these 3 get more time together before the front office decided to move on from one of them. That way, a potential trade wouldn't have felt as rushed, and Sacramento probably would have been able to get an even better trade package for one of their young guards. If the Kings didn't make this trade and decided to keep Halliburton, I'm pretty confident that he would have raised his trade value even more in his 3rd season. Again, I'm not trying to hate on Sabonis, but if you're moving on from arguably your best young player, you'd want someone that's going to ensure your team makes the playoffs, not someone who gives you a better shot at making the play-in tournament. To sum it all up, the Kings have reiterated to everyone that they are the worst franchise in the NBA. Before the Kings made this trade, they were in the midst of another disappointing season. They were losing games, they went through a head coaching change, and almost every other night it seemed like their interim head coach Alvin Gentry was calling the team out for a lack of effort. It's safe to say that there were very few bright spots on this roster, so for Sacramento to move on from one of their brightest young players was just shocking. This trade makes me wonder if their future draft picks will have trust in the front office, if they'll continue to make major decisions out of pride or desperation, and ultimately, if they'll ever prove to the league that they are a trustworthy and competently run franchise. Yes, this trade does make the Kings better in the short term, but the long-term cost of this deal will ultimately come back to haunt them. Anyways, that's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And with all that being said, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video.